What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Marty. Good to see you. Hope you're all doing well. Surrounded by three awesome gentlemen, as always, on this part of the week. It's good to see you. Kellen, what's going on?
Nothing much, man. Busy week for me. A lot of stuff going on with work. So I'm happy to have a little bit of getaway during my crazy work week. Come here and talk about some heavy metal with you guys. So let it been spinning. I grabbed it as I was getting ready to sit down here last minute. All right. So we kind of talked about this is, I guess, a group of musicians that from Australia last week. Nagzul was the band I was talking about. This is Pestilential Shadows.
Good band.
A little bit more of like a melodic thing by comparison to Nagzul, which are a little bit more symphonic in nature. But this is Revenant from 2019, I want to say. They have a new one out this year that didn't really stick with me. Maybe I need to spend some more time with it, but nonetheless, Pestilential Shadows. Still a little bit more in the black metal vein. This is Dark Medieval Times on cassette. Original there. Check it out. But
nice.
I don't know how that's going to come through in terms of the camera and the glare, but I could probably pull it out of the case. That may be helpful.
Where'd you find that
at? This actually was in a record store back in Oregon, in Corvallis of all places. But anyway, so been spinning that. Been trying to get a little bit more into my very limited cassette collection. And then this one kind of inspired by last week. I wouldn't quite call this thrash or even like necessarily corner worship, but Molten Chains, Torment and Shrine. This was out on Alone Records back in 22. I think this is their second full length. Band, I believe, is from Austria, and it's kind of, you can tell by the album artwork, it's a little bit of that kind of darker occultish thing going on, but I would say they're much more rooted in like heavy metal and thrash than anything sort of black metal related. But an interesting kind of weird style. I think you listen to Corner and it's much more like your traditional tech stuff. This is odd, but works for me. So
who's that again, Kellen? Because that sounds up my alley. I want to check that out.
Yeah, so they're called Molten Chains.
Molten Chains. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, man. Good to see you. Logan, good to see you. What's been going on?
Hey, good to see everybody. Hope you all had a good Halloween on a Friday. The stream was fun. Was doing the whole trick-or-treat thing. So I was sitting on my front porch, blasting some Ozzy. That was the theme of the evening. Finally broke out all the Ozzy records kind of for the first time since, after recovering, dealing with his passing. So it was nice just sitting there and listening through like the first 4 or 5, while sipping a beer. Each trick-or-treater got one Ozzy reissue. So somehow there was plenty left over. They didn't want any. So Ozzy there. And then also right before Halloween on my channel, I finally dropped a video, a review of the latest album from this Asheville, North Carolina, kind of first wave inspired metal band called first wave black metal inspired metal band called All Hell. Their new album is called Sunsetter. This is their sophomore effort right here, The Red Sect. So somewhat straightforward, vampire-esque, but somewhere between first wave black metal, punk, and traditional heavy metal is kind of where these guys fall in. Like we get a little bit of Venom, a little bit of Celtic Frost, a little bit of Midnight to come up with these guys' sounds. So wanted to be able to talk about them before Halloween and over on Metal and Beer Snob channel. go subscribe. I was able to. So, and then last night I had the absolute pleasure and joy to see Ulcerate all the way from New Zealand, touring on the new album from last year, Cutting the Throat of God, and picked it up finally. We actually did an album club on this last year, and I liked it, but I didn't love it on the album club episode. And I think seeing it live and just having more time with it, it's warming on
Sold
me.
it.
More songs are jumping off. Like I'm noticing more like intricate technical melodies that I do not remember there being there the first time around. So, but Ulcerate, phenomenal live band. It's amazing that 3 people can create this sound in the live environment. And honestly, it's just worth it to see their drummer, Jamie St. Morant, just destroy, like absolutely demolish. I don't know how he has that level of precision for an hour and 20 minutes. It boggles the mind. So I think even if you're not a fan of Ulcerate, you should go just to watch the drummer perform. And then trying to wrap my head around some symphonic black metal this week. It's not my forte, honestly. Was revisiting some of the ones in my collection that are like kind of where I started with the style. Old Man's Child was pretty early on with not this album, but Pagan Prosperity was the first one I got. This one is the 1998 Ill-Natured Spiritual Invasion. And I've always liked this one because it's got Gene Hoglan on drums, and anything with that guy on drums is worth the price of admission. So a bit more straightforward and honestly less symphonic than what we're talking about tonight. So kind of helped ease me into the giant orchestral world that is this style of music.
Right on. Good to see you, Jim. Welcome. How you
Hey,
doing?
everybody. Doing good. With the local record store, and as most of you know, like I'm not super into St. Vitus. We've covered him on Album Club before, but I've been trying to get into him. So I saw this at my local record store, and I thought this was one of the ones with Wino on it, which shows I don't know much about St. Vitus. But I picked up COD. This is the one without. There is no Wino on it.
Was that Scott Reeder? Was that his name?
No,
wrong?
I think it's some other guy. I think this is the only album he's on. But
Nope,
so I
didn't
was
mind
like,
that one.
his name is where's this guy at? Christian Linderson. Yeah,
I wasn't even fucking close.
this is the polarizing St. Vitus album, actually,
Yeah.
because neither Scott or Wino is on it. So I was like really kind of angry with myself once I got it home and actually read the back of it. And but I'm happy to say, I hadn't heard this. I actually liked it. I thought he did a good job. I liked the riffs on it. So I'm for being a mistake, I'm happy with the mistake. I thought it was good. I will try again and get some Wino next time. But shows what happens when you don't actually read the back cover of a record you buy, but it's on me. So also, this is one I've been wanting to get for a long time. I finally ran across it. It's one of those things that didn't like enough to order it, but I knew if I ever ran across it in a record store, I'd buy it. But Nile's Annihilation of the Wicked. This is my favorite by them. I just think the songwriting and the riffs are just all there on this one. And I have like another Nile album, but it just didn't hit the same way. But this one, like to me, is front to back, just killer, no filler.
Oh, yeah.
Great riffs, great solos, great lyrics, just everything about this one. It just has I think it really accomplished, what they were setting out to do with the whole Egyptian thing. I think they actually pulled it off on this one. So I don't think it's any surprise. Anybody knows Nile. That's a lot of people think it's their best. And given my, opinion of last week's Corner album, I'm happy to show this one that's a lot better, much, much better. And this one, I've always been defending RIP and Punishment for Decadence against this one because a lot of, and Logan and I talked about this, a lot of the younger generation of Corner fans, like this is the ultimate, you know what I mean? And out of like disdain, like I purposely never bought it because I was tired of like fighting with people about the first two being better.
It's just as good.
But I finally, yes, it is just as good. I finally picked it up, but I'm not going to argue anymore. This one rules too.
It really does.
And, so, I mean, they really are. The first three are just, untouchable. It's awesome. And yeah, so good corner right here. All the donuts.
All right. Well, I just gotta say, not to be super cryptic, but just a cautionary tale that if you have a basement, basements are great until they're not great. Second flood happened on Monday night about 2 a.m. So
Damn.
if you own a basement and you have stuff that is personal to you, make sure it's up off the floor. Yeah, that's the end of our public service announcement. Other than that, Saturday, the kid and I went down to Grand Rapids with our buddy Jason, did some record digging. Man, so much fun. Had a great time. And even after lambasting Danzig 4, I found this in a used bin. And you know what? I think this album is great. And if 4 was anything like this, I would have had a different opinion on it. But at this point, Danzig, the band, sounds hungry. The songs are really good. There's an awesome feel to it. There's a uniqueness to it. What he's doing in what the hell year is this? 88. It's leading towards more commercial style of hard rock / metal, but it's just different. It's different than what's out there. And I don't know. I like the songs on this one. I think the production is unique. The sound is unique. It works. It works for me on this one. It did not work for me on 4. 4 was boring as all hell. And that's just that. I also finally picked up the new Draped album, which is called Shadow Play. Finally spun this last night. Holy crap. It's pretty intense. He's not doing anything dissimilar to anything else. He is a band. They are not doing anything dissimilar than anything else in the catalog, but in light of everything that's going on in Ukraine right now, there's just an intensity, a longing, a wanting for things. There's just an energy that's very caustic, and I don't know. I still have a lot to unpack with this record, but like all Druk albums, it comes at you from a very emotional place, and it just feels like there's anger and fury mixed in with it. That a great record. First one listen, it was pretty intense. Also down there, I picked up the latest Lead into Gold. This is Paul Barker from Ministry, his solo project. It's complete. Paul Ledney. My brain is just not working tonight. Paul Barker from Ministry fame. He, when he was in Ministry, he had Lead into Gold, and obviously he's not Ministry. He hasn't been in for a while. He's focusing on this project, and yeah, I anticipated Chicago style, repetitive, industrial, Chicago tracks, Wax Trax inspired, repetitive, industrial. I like the last album. I like what came before it, but it is a little bit of that, but there's a lot of layering on this one. The sounds are really good. Paul's voice is a little whiny, but it fits perfectly in with this. I don't know. I listened to it a couple times, really dig it. Better than the last one, actually. So that might make the year. And I was inspired, a little more industrial stuff. Spun the new Black Magnet record called Mega Mantra. It's metallized industrial, and where the metal is stripped away and it's just industrial, they do a really good job with it. Sometimes I complain that metal dudes messing with industrial, they kind of miss they touch on the common denominators of the genre, but you could tell these guys are really into it, and they know how to layer well. They have great sounds, and when it's mixed with the metal, it works. It works really well. Pretty good stuff. And yep, I've been I don't know how this evaded me over the years, but yep, Hansen and Friends. This is Kai Hansen's debut solo record. 3 decades in metal. I figured this was going to be just a hard rock record, because that's, there was a hype sticker, or you read on the inside, it says something about wanting to pay tribute to his roots. So I'm like, okay, here we go. It's gonna be a hard rock record, but it's got Ralph Sheepers on it and Pete Seelick. I can't pronounce his name very well. From Iron Savior. D. Snyder's on here. Tobias Sammet from Avantasia's on here. Michael Kiska, Roland Grappow, Michael Viketh. It's like a who's who. A bunch of contributors come in here, but man, there's only one song on here I don't like. It's Enemies of Fun. Born Free's not great. Enemies of Fun isn't great, but man, you get to side B, making headlines, Stranger in Time. What a great song. Fire. The album as it goes gets better and better and better and better. So yeah, I don't know why I missed this after 2006. This came out 2016. So almost 10 years. I always thought this was just the live Vakken thing. I would see it. Well, I finally saw it. I paid too much for this. I'm not gonna lie. I paid too much for it. We won't go there. But tonight we're talking about Lisbon, Portugal's now defunct, long defunct symphonic black metal band called Sirius, with their 2000 debut, Aeons of Magick. There it is. One of the remaining promos that still exist in this house, thanks to the flood that happened. We won't, still a little salty. Anyway, yeah, let's talk about first impressions. Logan.
All right. I am certainly no like black metal expert, especially if you compare me to other people on the panel and in the chat. And that is especially true of this subgenre of black metal, the symphonic style. It has kind of long been one of my least favorite. It's either there or like industrial black metal. It just has never really synced up with me, and it almost seems antithetical to what I would like from my black metal. Like black metal's more of this like raw and primitive and naturalistic and organic sounding music to me, and especially when it really hits, those are the elements that I appreciate. Like I enjoy a lot of the, you know, original Norwegian and Swedish stuff, and then of course I atmospheric black metal is very much, you know, my favorite style. Symphonic is just going in the opposite direction, intentionally, you know, building up the layers upon layers, making it more complicated, kind of making it more polished in a way, just dressing up something that I don't think necessarily needs it. So I just have never truly clicked with the style, and you know, going into this week, that was very much on my mind, and I was kind of assuming it was going to be one of those weeks where I would just sit back and kind of like listen to what you guys have to say and kind of more understand what people who like the style of music are looking for and wanting. Because man, when you first hit play on this album, this is like the in boss for overdone, overblown symphonic, like 90s 2000s black metal. Like it's just layers upon layers of, you know, it doesn't sound like super organic. Like you can tell it's of the era. The orchestral elements sound very computer programmed and patched in, which is, it's of the time, like it's of the style. I get it, and it just makes me think of, you know, like kind of what RuneScape had as a soundtrack at the time of the 2000s, and you know, fantasy video games in a way as well. I still enjoyed it, and actually I ended up even on the first listen enjoying the intensity of this album. Like it has a certain go for the throat and kind of cold cosmic feeling that I think good black metal does strive for. So it definitely still had elements that, you know, I look for in black metal. Just the main element, of course, is the ever flowing, ever you know, pulsing orchestration on here. But I knew I had my work cut out for me, and it's probably going to be an uphill battle. So we'll see where I end up on this.
Jim.
So yeah, didn't know what to expect. Hadn't heard of these guys before, and my first thoughts were Castlevania. I was like, oh, okay. It reminded me of those old Nintendo Super Nintendo sounds. But Yeah, it's really well done. I mean, the drummer, I think he's played with an anathema. You know what I mean? I mean, you don't get to that level, without being talented. He does some great things on this. In fact, he was so precise. At first, I thought they were programmed. You know what I mean? So
Dude, I would be utterly shocked if it was real because he's also credited for
It's the main dude who's using all the orchestration.
orchestration,
Yeah, yeah.
bass. Anyway,
but
I'm
why
shocked.
would you program it if you're that?
I
good?
I
No,
know. I know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it is. It's hard. I don't know.
Yeah,
I thought it was programmed too, but
yeah. I mean, he's played drums in a bunch of other bands too, so it'd be weird to me if he programmed. But I mean, hey, the guy from Middle of the Road did it, right? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not unheard of.
No.
So it could be, but
it's a production probably that's making it look so clinical.
oh yeah, yes, and that was definitely, and just symphonic black metal in general. That's my issue with it. Is like the orchestrations are so much louder than everything else. You know what I mean? It just drowns out everything. It makes I don't like having to search for the metal. You know what I mean? So it was there, but the only album that I own that's like this that I like is and better than this is, of course, Emperor, man. Yeah. First Emperor, dude. But I don't even have any, I can't even think of their names now. Whoever the big symphonic guys are,
Dimmu Borgir.
Dimmu Borgir, yeah. I've always thought about buying Stormblast, but because I thought if I was going to get any of that stuff, that would be the one I'd have. Because
it's a great album. Yeah,
it's pretty good. But even that, like, I've never pulled the trigger on. You know what I mean? So, yeah, this was a tough one for me. Yeah, there's some good sounds here and there, some interesting things, but I don't want to give too much away. But yeah, it was a bit of a slog for me on this one.
Well, for me, I heard this when it came out. I reviewed it, I believe, and to be honest, it's really interesting to put it on after not hearing it since then and realizing how this style is kind of making I don't know if it ever went away fully, but a comeback. I mean, you hear like the Finnish band Vargraf. You listen to that band and their last couple albums sound a lot like this. Maybe a bit better, bands like War Moon Lord or Stormkeep. I mean, there's still a good contingent of bands that are trying to kind of upkeep this sound. But when this came out, 2000, I'll be honest with you. I mean, it just, this sounds like Moon and the Scorpio, maybe the second Limbonic Art album. This sounds like Limbonic Art. Also, there's a bit of Arcturus in here. You got a little Obtain Enslavement in here. You've got Covenant in here. You've got Old Man's Child in here. This is very much the snapshot of an era that was booming with this stuff. And, a lot of the bands went on to bigger things. And it just seems like Sirius were the band that kind of came in, picked up the scraps. This came out on Nocturnal Art Productions, which maybe some of you don't know. It was Samuth from Emperor's own personal label. He had a label for a while. He put out 55 releases, something like that. So yeah, the Emperorisms, I could tell, everybody likes to smell their own farts, right? Well, hey, this sounds a little bit like my band. I'm going to put this out. But yeah, putting this back on this week, man, it just feels the synths. If there was more separation between guitars and synthesizers, I might be a little bit more entertained, but the synth lines, the guitars most of the time are mirroring what the synth is playing. And the synth is so dominant in the mix. It seems like it's backwards. It shouldn't be that way. The synth should be off in the background, creating this cosmic swirl, this atmosphere, but nope, right out there, right in your face. And you're just listening to these chords and the guitars are following these chords. And then when they put the little flourishes in, it sounds like a Disney soundtrack thing. It just, I don't know, has not aged well for me. It sounds dated. And I think there's bands out there right now that are doing this style a bit better. But we'll see. We'll see if my mind changes. But Ellen.
It's all good. Yeah. So actually my first impression with this record and still lasting impression with it isn't that different. I don't know. You kind of get in those modes where as a collector and as a fan of this music, you initially will collect sort of the initial like first tier or the major recommendations, the albums that are sort of the pillars within the subgenre, right? But every once in a while, I'll get like an urge to reach a little bit deeper into that world and see if I can find anything else. Like, what are the ones that I don't know that I potentially should add to my collection or would provide a greater context to what was going on at this time period in heavy metal? And this is one of the albums I picked up. So initially, like to Marty and Jim and Logan's point, I think there is a lot to take in terms of how dominant the synth plays a role within the mix, how orchestration is sort of first and foremost when it comes to the songwriting. To Jim's point about trying to search for the metal, like I did spend concerted effort here. Like, oh yeah, there's the guitar part, there's the metal part,
Yeah.
but it's not that interesting relative to what is going on with the orchestration on this album.
Because the synth is playing what the guitars are playing most of the time. I mean, you got it. It's just backwards.
We'll
you
get
know?
to this. Yeah, we'll get to the songwriting this, but I think it's exactly that. I think this was written with orchestration first, and then the guitars came in to fill in the rest.
Probably
of the
right.
But I mean, to Jim's point, once there are two instrumentals on this album, and it's one thing to like have these sort of synthy Disney flourishes in the midst of a black metal song, right? By 2000, I kind of get that's happening within symphonic black metal, but those moments, the immediate thing to Jim's point, like it took me back that I just defeat Bowser and rescue the princess. Like that was my first thought when I heard those. It just reminded me of my childhood video game like soundtracks. And it was so kind of confusing for me, right? To Logan's point, that specific kind of synth sound, I think, feels incredibly dated. It is rooted in a very specific time period. So maybe for fans of the genre in 2000 when it was coming out, they had potentially more patience with it. I feel the same way about sort of programmed drums. Like there's a very specific kind of niche world where that works well within black metal. But man, there's exactly. Thanks, Devin. There's a part of this record that just feels so like if the stage had been set by being the most bombastic, over-the-top symphonic band, I feel at some point that's what Sirius is reaching for. And I listened to this record, and it's an interesting sort of, to Marty's point, like piece in time to go back and explore it, because it was gaining momentum and popularity and a lot of visibility. I think the symphonic elements made it more accessible for a lot of people potentially. So it is an interesting album to put on. There's parts of it that I really like, but there's other parts where I kind of roll my eyes and kind of what were they thinking at this time period. So it's not too different, but anyway, I'll just lead right in here with my question. So most musical genres follow a period of innovation and before eventual stagnation. In addition to following this familiar artistic course, when listening to Aeons of Magick, it seems to me that symphonic black metal is often at risk at almost turning into a parody of itself by the start of the 21st century. Do you think that this is a fair characterization? If so, what do you think were the major obstacles for the subgenre faced? Are there any parallels that come to mind in heavy metal history? And if you want me to put that up in the chat, I will do that in case there's 3 questions I have there for you.
Well, it's in my. I'm just going to jump in here.
Okay.
Do I think there are major obstacles the subgenre faced? Yeah, the main obstacle was themselves. They seemingly had endless. You start adding keyboards into stuff, you could go into a lot of different directions, but they all kind of went for the astral / mystical type of soundscape. I mean, like this album, this instantly sounds like Limbonic art. They're not doing anything one or two bands kind of set the mark, and everybody is just trying to jump up and touch the mark. You know, they're not doing much within their scope to do something a bit different with it. I don't know what that different would be. It's easy for me to sit here and say, not original enough, not original enough. But what do you do? Where do you go? You listen to what you listen to, and you're influenced by that. And if everybody's listening to Obtain Enslavement or Limbonic Art or Dimmu Borgir, I mean, that's going to creep into your songwriting. It just is. Let me see what else is going on here with this question. Symphonic black metal is often at risk of almost turning to a parody of itself at the start of the 21st. You know, it's one of those things that it had a point and it just never really grew beyond it. There were so many bands doing it and touching upon the same themes. I think it was a short lifespan, and it died out relatively quickly. And it's just interesting now to hear bands doing it that it almost feels fresh again. You know, there's been so much history, 20 some years have passed. People new getting into the scene may not have heard of these other bands, and they're hearing some of this other stuff for the first time and like, ooh, this is, like Dungeon Sin mixed with black metal. And it's kind of like that, but I think this side of the black metal, symphonic black metal, was more soundtrack inspired, really. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but do I see obstacles? Yeah, themselves. They couldn't get out of their own way. They were all just kind of doing the same thing, the vocals. It sounds like Isan screaming, there's a very similar high pitch. Granted, that's a common element for black metal. A lot of bands do that, but when you start adding a bunch of keyboards to it, one thing you can say about Emperor's keyboard work was innovative. It wasn't just nee, nee, nee. There was shit going on. Isan was obviously a very talented pianist and did really interesting, 15 different layers. This is one guy with, idea how to play chords, and there's some other interesting stuff going on too, but never really separate from the guitar work. So I don't know. I'm rambling. Logan, your thoughts?
Does it become self-parody? Yeah. I mean,
it's kind of like the same way with power metal. Sorry.
No. I mean, I was just about to dive in. I think that when you get a genre that kind of blows up fast enough and, or has enough time on its hands or enough bands interested in it, it's always going to become some form of self-parody or some form where it becomes like an echo chamber where the bands are just all taking ideas from each other and basically all going in the same direction to that zenith that once they reach it, there's no point, right? Especially when it comes to a style of music where the goal and the purpose is, let's just turn it up to 11, let's up the intensity, let's up the orchestration, let's up the keyboard elements and all of this extra stuff. Let's just do more of it. More. And then as soon as you've done all of it and the whole album is just 45 minutes of intense wall of sound orchestra, what do you do from there? I mean, you can't really go into any other new avenues. It's the only step, I think, is to hit that reset button and to go back to the Stone Age or first wave black metal, if you will, which I think inevitably happened. I mean, in your question, you kind of ask for parallels with other genres. I mean, yeah, like technical death metal in the 2000s was basically this exact same situation. Like Jim, you were showing Nile. By the time we get to Cerebral Bore and all those bands that were just playing nonstop, 250 beats per minute blast beats, what could you do? You've done everything. Like, you just have to go back to where you started and kind of, pick up the pieces to honestly become something original again. And I think that is maybe what's happening currently. Marty, you mentioned a resurgence. It certainly seems like it's happening. I don't know if you guys have checked out that One of Nine album.
I just did the other day for the first time. It's pretty decent. Yeah. Nothing new, but decent.
Nothing new, but they're picking up the pieces and slowly
people are talking about it.
Yep, yeah. They're putting the monster back together for this symphonic black metal, but they're doing it in somewhat of a different way. Like I think there's a bit more summoning and a bit more melodic black metal in the way that they're doing it than I think where all these I guess Norwegian, this is Polish, or no, not Polish, Portuguese.
Yep.
Or all these European bands were kind of doing it in the 2000s, but it's, you know, it's Ouroboros. It comes around. So we're on a new cycle of the style. And I don't know, I do, it does seem that the symphonic black metal thing really went fast, like went bright, and yeah, by the year 2000, it was already like, you know, too big
Old
for
hat.
its britches. Yeah,
Yeah.
old hat. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just because of, as I said, if you push the knob up to 11, there's not really any other place for you to go. You've already achieved it. And if you're just aping old albums like Limbonic Art, then it's just a matter of time. So I feel like I hit at least 2 of the 3 questions you mentioned there, Kellen. So
For sure.
I'll pass it off.
Before I get to Jim, though, I will say that I see power metal following us. I kind of threw it in there at the end as it came to me, but power metal, there's a similar feeling in that than there is in this, especially in the Sirius band. But I will say bands like Twilight Force, laugh all you want, that symphonic inclusion is far more classically skilled than this is. I mean, that is just, it feels like power metal Emperor. It's just that level of good. Whether you can feast on the cheese or not, that's up to you. But I don't know. I just see that the power metal still keeps on giving, because I think the forefathers of the genre are still so strong today, whereas symphonic black metal is a bit less technically gifted, if that makes any sense.
I mean, like Emperor's still touring their old records, right? It's not like there's a whole. They're like the exception to the rule, right?
True. Yeah.
You're the one that's still around doing the old
And
stuff.
Dibu are still doing it too, but they were, you know, old man's child's back. I mean, everybody get the band back together, you know, or like Logan said, it's all cyclical. Jim.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much covered it pretty well. To the question, you know, is the parody thing a fair characterization? Yeah, I think it is. I think anything that's like super hyperbolic like that, you know, very bombastic, over the top. I mean, it's just easy to laugh at, but at the same time, I mean, you know, there's a lot of people on the outside of metalldom that think metal in general is fully as absurd. You know what I mean? Yeah, all of it is. You know what I mean? And I've unfriended people for expressing that same opinion to me. So yeah, I get where that comes from, and it makes sense. But that's just because my personal opinion is this is just not a genre of black metal that I ever reach for unless it's Emperor. Yeah, anyone that's tried it, you know, it just doesn't move me at all. I think the best thing that the guy from Limbonic Art ever did was Nocturnity. You know, the album where he's got the night helmet on, like that's the one. Like
that's the same guy. I don't think that's the same guy, is it?
Yeah, same guy. Yeah.
You sure?
Yep. I just looked it up on archives just a second ago.
Did not know that.
Yep. And but yeah, I'd much rather listen to that, you know. So, but again, I think that's more colored by my own opinion, and I think if you were deep into that scene, you probably wouldn't feel the same way. When I listen to black metal, I love the game Simon's Quest, second Castlevania, but I don't want to think about that when I'm listening to black metal. And that's what I kept thinking about when I was listening to this. That and the soundtrack to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, when we got to that Stargate instrumental, which I actually love that movie. And when I was a kid, my parents, in a fruitless attempt to get me out of listening to metal and hard rock, they bought me the soundtrack to it. Yeah, little funny story there, but at least to me. Let's see. The other thing was the obstacles, well, I think those are obvious. Logan, he explained it best. I think when you go that far out, when you're completely just over the top, super classical, I mean, what else are you going to do? All you can do is rein it back in, or just become a noise band, go completely opposite. Those are your only options. In terms of parallels in metal history, that part of the question is the most intriguing to me, because I was, trying to think that through, and really, when you think about, like Marty said, if you're thinking about just, to an outsider, things like power metal, things like, Man of War era Viking metal, things like that, that's always going to be like, an over the top parallel that an outsider would. But again, to us on the inside, it doesn't seem, that crazy at all. We take that, we embrace it. But yeah, I think it takes a lot of skill to play this genre, even like if you're doing like you're doing on this album, in my opinion, really aping on In the Night Side Eclipse. But at the same time, if you can do that, you're still 1,000 times better of a musician than I am. So I have nothing but respect for it. It just doesn't give me that sort of that empowerment that I get from most metal, like that feeling of empowerment that I get by listening to metal. I just don't get that here. So it not a dig on the musicianship at all, or like where the genre was at that time, because I still think that it took a lot of talent to be able to, conjure up, music like this, even if in this particular case it was, to me, very derivative. It's still, it shows a lot of skill. So I don't want to downplay that, because I think it's worth mentioning. The symphonic black metal, I mean, right now, I mean, you can spit out any kind of metal, and especially stuff like this with, AI with just a couple of prompts. But back then, you had to know your stuff, So if I can't give them anything else, I'll give them that.
That feeling is your wiener smiling. Sorry. That struck me as funny.
I don't, Aaron. I usually don't get smiling wieners from listening to metal, but if you do, man, more power to you.
I think it's a Man of War reference.
Man of War can give you that.
We're talking about Man of War in the chat. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that struck me as funny.
For some people, there's hymns. For others, Man of War. That's the ultimate blue pill.
They'll eventually make it to Album Club here one of these days.
Oh, dude, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
Kellen, your thoughts on your own question?
Yeah, so I guess obstacles for the genre. I do think it's kind of been talked about. The additional emphasis on synthesizers, I think, is kind of pushing the genre in a very specific way that probably had a very short sort of window of opportunity. The promise of Nightside Eclipse, by the time we get to 2000, I feel it's kind of gone everywhere it could potentially go. And that kind of goes into like the next part of it. For me, the parallels was, from in my mind, like when I thought of Emperor and symphonic black metal, the parallel was Carcass and Gore Grind. It's that you have one band that comes along and in a very short window of time releases two of the most, or in Carcass's, I guess, three really, really important records that sort of define the subgenre. And anything that kind of comes after that is sort of chasing after that mantle. I feel the same way about Emperor and symphonic black metal. In a very short window of opportunity, they kind of put out incredibly important classic records, and everything after is sort of chasing or following in the shadow of it. I think Carcass is the exact same thing with Gore Grind. It's a sort of a niche world, but set a standard, and then almost, it seemed insurmountable, I think, to try and get better than that, or push it in different directions. And I'm glad you brought up power metal, because for me, that is the greatest sort of parody of itself.
Sure.
And we've kind of talked about it, is like the focus on sort of secondary or tertiary things that define it in terms of the look. Like,
but that parody is part of an important part of the fucking elements.
Yeah. Okay. To the extent that it can go to, we may disagree a little bit here. is, you know, how much of that image defines the success or the identity of the band. You know, for me in the 2000s, it's looking at
Lost
like
Horizon, capes, body
okay,
paint. I mean,
yes.
the music on its own rips all kinds of ass, but
let's
then you
see
put the
back-
capes and the fucking.
Here we go. Okay, so we're going to steer us back on path. Like, I think in my mind, people will point to Cradle of Filth
Sure.
as sort of being the sort of test case for this sort of example.
The end boss.
Yeah, right. I also, you know, people who love Balsagoth as another, but they're kind of like, you know, it's a good time. It's not the same thing.
There's definitely a lot of power metal in Balsagoth.
Yeah,
as they went on in particular. Yeah.
So that kind of came to mind is this, there's a certain kind of like lightheartedness that seems to enter this record at times that does not work well within a black metal kind of background or context. So anyway, we can move on to there and go to a songwriting competition.
Yep. And songwriting, musicality, and composition of Aeons of Magick with a K, of course. Got to have the K. Logan.
Oh man, yeah. Trying to sift through this one was indeed tough for me. It's immense and dense, and it's just the elephant in the room. You know, the orchestration. Like, there's no escaping it. It's always there. It's always, you know, 10 stories tall and just gargantuan and hiding everything underneath it. Basically, the keys, I mean, is it all just honestly asking, like, is it all just, you know, like computer patchwork, like just a synth, basically a synth machine, just playing different, like, orchestral notes, and he's just, you know, looping it over top? Because that's kind of what it sounds like to me. Like, I don't hear any actual instruments, you know. It just sounds like synths to me.
Yeah, I don't think it's an actual orchestra being.
Yeah, I mean, like,
it's
at
all
all.
synth.
It's all just synths, you know, layers upon layers of synths, which is impressive. I'm not trying to nitpick how impressive it is, because it is how many different layers there are, but there's just no escaping it, you know. And I understand that that's the point of the genre and the point of, like, when you're listening to this album. That's one of the reasons you're going to listen to it, is because of how encompassing it is and how impossible it is to avoid the synth layers and the orchestration. It just clogs up everything else for me. Like, I'm always like looking for the guitar, and it is indeed playing second fiddle. Like, I agree with your point earlier, Kellen. It was the orchestration first, and the guitar was like, let me just probably copy the orchestration, just play exactly what they're doing. And we'll get to this in the production, but just how it's layered and produced, the guitar is always like bottom right or bottom left in my mix, you know, when I'm listening to it. And I often don't even hear it. There's a couple of tracks where it does make a forward facing front, and I enjoy those the most inherently. But for the most part, you have to make amends with the orchestration that is all too prevalent. And I think every now and then I would be in the mood for it. This seems like a mood album. Like, the setting, I think, needs to be right. Like, for example, I sometimes listen on my lunch break. I'm just sitting in my cubicle with headphones on, listening to whatever album of the week it is. And this one did not work for that setting. Felt very anticlimactic, and I kind of just went over my head. But other times, like, I go on a walk or a run, and thankfully the time change lined up perfectly. Right after work, it'd be like dusk. A lot better. If you feel like the mood is right, and the music itself, as I said, I like the intensity of it. It still has this black metal level of intensity and movement. Like, there's really no slow parts. It's all quite urgent and just coming at you, wall of sound wise, which is what, you know, black metal does best. So to me, that part was good. And when I was clicking with the music, I was definitely enjoying the experience overall. And definitely certain aspects of it. I did get into the orchestration a bit more. That's still the biggest hurdle. I actually do like the guy's voice on here, Gornoff, as he's called on this album. His vocal performance, I thought, was fairly genuine. Sometimes with like the symphonic stuff that I've heard, it can kind of come off a little bit goofy at times, but like his black metal, rasps and snarls sound pretty savage, and I even like his spoken word elements, his spoken vocals, kind of add a nice dynamic to his performance. And towards the end, the final track, there's some vocal layering and some more intense, like almost death metal kind of gutturals that pop up. And yeah, that part was a highlight for sure. I do like the drum performance, whether it's programmed or not. I think that's the most black metal aspect of this album, and to me, that's kind of what grounds it and centers it into being like a metal performance. Just how intense and kind of blasty it is. Like it sounds like how you would want a black metal like drum performance to be. It's very very clinical, very intense, and that to me one of the highlights. I do like the overall feel of the music. It feels somewhat alien, and I mean, for some reason, the space theme always enters into this era of symphonic black metal. I don't know if that was a limbonic art thing or who kind of brought that element in, but I can't escape it. That feeling of it being an alien, like you're suffocating in outer space, while listening to this music. It feels so vast but still cold at the same time. And I mean that's a cool feeling. That's a cool vibe to get from the album. So I always kind of left after finishing listening to it, with the feeling of being surrounded by something alien and larger than life, which was indeed a cool aspect to this release. Other than that, though, I mean, honestly, I'm still wrapping my head around the orchestration. Like it's a lot, and it's always there's so many different layers and stuff. It was tough for me to put where I was in the album at any one particular point in time. So I'll pass the baton.
Kellen.
I definitely get what you're coming from, Logan, in terms of that trying to find a grounding point during the course of a song. Just because there is so much synth work going on, I often felt like you're used to developing like a familiarity in terms of like a way a riff would be phrased. And I don't think you have that here. You just have these sort of pulsating waves of synthesizers. The one point that I thought was like an interesting sort of contribution from someone who'd simultaneously be the synthesize, orchestration and drummer comes on the opening track. I think it's called Sidereal Mirror. There's a point on that where the drumming is sort of like comes through and hits the cymbals at the same time. You get this sort of like key sort of slam comes down in a single chord. As they take off into the next section of the song, instead of the drummer going to that cymbal strike, he just blasts right through the entire time. You are waiting for the cymbals to enter the sort of punctuate the phrase. As it just goes through, the actual synthesizer part recycles back to the beginning phrasing. So it's like repeating that phrase, and then you get an embellishment on top of that sort of chord. It's a cool way where like they're playing with a sense of momentum in that song. And I thought it was a good insight once I kind of realized that the same person doing the drumming is actually doing the synth work. It works in tandem in the way that I don't feel the guitars are really driving anything. It very much seems like that was the centerpiece to how these songs were going to develop. And then the guitars are just sort of sitting underneath everything. Now, we'll get to the production notes later, but I don't get like there's not guitar soloing. There's not the weird, like you listen to an Emperor record, there's proggy elements to those albums. He was, also a very, very talented guitar player. And I think that sort of helped to elevate the symphonic element. Here, that guitar work definitely is a hindrance to the overall experience of the record. The fact that it's not contributing to these songs and they're so dependent on the synths, I think is a little bit, it feels underserved or undercooked in terms of the songwriting. I do, though, like paying attention to all the different parts of the orchestra that he is using as synth samples, I think is interesting. Like you just not only get sort of the synth string variation, but horns, woodwinds, other things, choirs. To Logan's point, that is a major investment on this album. And it serves the density. It might not be the most complex arrangement, but I do think within all of that maelstrom, there is a lot to sort of pay attention to in terms of how much time was devoted to how they wanted to use synthesizers in this record. There are really just, I mean, five songs here, I think. 5 songs and 2 instrumentals. So it's a pretty simple album. To not talk about the instrumentals and the songwriting here, I think would be something that we need to talk about, because so many of the early comments were like, I'm in the circus. This is a Disney movie. This is like, there's something strange and off-putting that really bothers me with those. Like when I first heard this, I was actually game for the first 3 tracks before we got to the instrumentals. That instrumental hits and it completely pulls me out of what I want from this kind of music. I get that at this point in symphonic black metal, that was a point of interest that people wanted to sort of push the boundaries. But whatever promise symphonic metal, black metal, introduced within the genre, I feel it completely spilled over into something else on that track, and on the closer as well. The closing instrumental, I also don't think helps this record in any way. So those instrumentals, for anyone who's not paying attention to sort of, or is not looking for that and doesn't know what's going to hit, it will definitely sort of rip you out of this sort of black metal experience, and take you somewhere else that you probably may be difficult for you to handle.
All right, Jim.
Are we still on composition?
Songwriting, composition, yeah.
All right. Not much to say about this. This album, it's executed well. The synths are deep and layered, and the drumming is excellent. Vocals are appropriately cold and full on black metal, but kind of what you expect. But see, that's kind of the problem. All of this stuff I've heard before, and I've heard done in a way that felt more unique and more interesting to me. So what ended up happening to me during the course of multiple listens to this album and trying to connect with it was a numbness that kind of took over, and so it's one of those things that has kind of proven to me throughout my years of, being into music more than your average person, like everybody in the chat and everybody watching is as well, is it takes more than a technical proficiency to grab me as a listener. There has to be some sort of like, deep-seated like emotional connection, whether that's the empowerment that I mentioned earlier, a true feeling of rage, sadness. It's all that sort of negative emotions that are expressed through metal, or even triumphant. If we're listening to power metal or classic heavy metal, I need something, something that's a feeling like that, that's very clear, and I just didn't get any of that. So musicianship, composition, all that stuff is here. It's at a high level. It's at a high level, probably even more so than a lot of the other, maybe not a lot, but I definitely say a portion of the albums that we cover on the album club. These guys are obviously talented, but I'd rather listen to a grimy, dirty, I'd rather listen to Convulse than this. That has, power and darkness and a dreariness and a heaviness that I feel something. You know, when I listen to this, I just don't feel anything. You know, when I mentioned earlier about, you know, this sounding like a soundtrack, it really does. You know, if the movie's good enough, the soundtrack will augment the emotion that you're supposed to be feeling. You know, whether that's anticipation, you know, dread, or, you know, worry, whatever. But if the movie is terrible, it doesn't matter how good the music is. The movie's still going to be terrible, right? And for me, you know, this is like watching a movie with a great soundtrack, but there's no plot, there's no emotional connection. It's just something that I've heard many times before, and, you know, and sort of a pale, you know, imitation of what has been done better, you know, by Emperor. So yeah. So composition's at a high level, but I feel like there's a flatness in the emotional impact coming off of this that kind of turned me off.
I agree with a lot with what Jim said there, but I do want to circle back around to Kellen's point of how it sounds like the keyboards were all composed first. That's a genius way of looking at it. Like when I was saying earlier, that feels like it's backwards. Like if the guitarist were to make all these riffs and all these songs, then the keyboard has to find a place where he's going to insert himself, more or less, or put the atmosphere in the background. Whereas the synth is so dense on this, it's like the guitars have taken on that role. They've taken on the role of the keyboard here, where they're trying to find a place to, and they don't. They just follow. It's easier just to follow the riffs. So that is really hard to shake. And, you know, Jim's whole point too, I agree with that. The musicianship on here is fine. I do like a lot of the formula here. It's just, I've heard it before, and we can say that a lot when we listen to metal. There's a lot, you know, there's innovators, and then there's a whole bunch of bands that latch onto that, and it's up to us to decide what we like and what we don't like. But in this case of Sirius, it is so on the nose. The emulation is so on the nose. I have a hard time shaking it. I just can't. I mean, I the whole time I'm thinking, damn, I want to listen to Limbonic Art. I want to hear Moon and the Scorpio, or Epitome of Illusions, or what I got the 4 CD box set. It's all good, solid stuff. And it sounds like this, which we didn't talk about this, but is there a worse album cover out there than this? I mean, what the hell?
I mean, this once again, this time period, right?
Photoshop
like all
is
that
due.
Photoshop album artwork, like it is 100% a travel back into time when that was a big deal.
Yeah, crazy. But the songwriting is, you know, everything. There's nothing here that sounds out of place until the instrumental, where all the metal is stripped away, and it's just the soundtrack piece, which I'm going to get to is one of my least favorite songs on the album. It's just it's very pretentious. It stands out. It's just like, you know, yeah, it's evident leading up to it. You can play synth quite well, and it's probably your favorite lead instrument. I don't know. It seems like that there's so much synth in the album leading up to this. An instrumental synth piece is unnecessary. It's unnecessary. I've had song after song. I've had synth with blast beats for, you know, 20 minutes before the song hits. It just seems like you're taking away and propping up something that, you know, we've already heard. I don't know. Production. Let's talk about production. Logan.
To a certain extent, I do have to tip my hat to the production. I mean, I think it does pull off sandwiching all the layers of synths and orchestration, and then a full metal band into a somewhat cohesive sound, where you can actually like peel back the layers and, you know, look through different levels of the orchestration and follow the guitar and follow what the drums are doing. I mean, there's no bass, of course, but, you know, who cares about bass in symphonic black metal, I guess.
right.
So I do respect the production for what it is. I mean, I think it is a product of its time and a product of this scene. and to give it credit, it's not overly processed and doesn't sound clean and stripped back. It still sounds cold and kind of unrelenting in a way. And I that is the main feel I get from the music in the album. So I think that succeeds. I mean, I did listen to some Demon Borgia this week. Puritanical Misanthropia was the album, and yeah, there's nothing cold about that. It's very, very polished and calculated as a production. So this is definitely more in line with like the traditional black metal, at least in that sense. And I do like how the drums are produced, whether they be programmed or not. They sound somewhat abrasive, somewhat clicky, but in like kind of a good way. Once again, this is black metal. Like, I think a clicky drum sound is par for the course, and I was kind of okay with how the double bass sounded and the sound of the snare. So
deep room ambience in the bass in the kick drums would have messed with the production.
Yeah, I think it added to the cold, somewhat sterile feeling of the album. So I liked it, and as I said, that to me that was my grounding point for the album, and the fact that you can hear the drums, as clearly as you can, definitely helped my enjoyment of it. As I said, the guitar is shafted. I mean, I guess it's just how the album was written, but then again, in the production, it always, for me, when I'm listening to it on headphones, I've not put it on any like actual speaker system, but on headphones, it's always in the lower right for whatever reason the guitar is. And on some songs, it'll migrate to the lower left, but it's never, it's never leading. It's never up top. It's always very much in the background. And I mean, it's just following. So you don't need it to be in the lead role, I guess. But I would just appreciate a little bit more guitar work. And I mean, I guess that could mess with the sound that Sirius is going for, but at the same time, that's what I want out of a black metal listen, is a bit more guitar work. And to give Sirius some more credit, like the amount of orchestration and the amount of lead work that the orchestration is doing is kind of unique. Like all of the other symphonic black metal bands I was listening to, the guitar is still the lead instrument, and as you said, Marty, the keys and the synths are like accents and in the background filling in the space. So this is very much flipping it on its head and changing it up a little bit, and I do admire that to a certain extent. So yeah, I mean, the orchestration is still the elephant in the room, as it should be, because this is that kind of album. So my complaints with the production is really almost my complaints with this style of music in general, but at least it still has a cold, more naturalistic feel to it at times.
All right, Logan. Oh, I'm sorry, Kellen. I looked at Logan and grabbed Kellen's square. Anyway, sounds naughty. It sounds naughty. Sorry.
So, yeah, Samuth is doing the production here. I think it feels to me like he knows what he's doing in terms of the mastering. Nocturnal Arts Productions. This is kind of what they do. This is their wheelhouse. The choice, though, like, so that we've kind of beat this up a little bit, but the choice to have the synth so prominent in the mix, I think, just also corresponds with the songwriting. I think that the reason it's so upfront is that's how this album is meant to be heard. It is a synth record. What makes me probably like those instrumentals are also, I guess, is more of a songwriting complaint than a production one, but they seem tone deaf. Meaning like they just are completely divorced in terms of what this needs to sound like in terms of choices with the notes and chords being played. So I guess it's more of a composition complaint, but the Samuth production here or mastering on this is great. And I actually don't have any complaints in terms of the overall sound. From the drums, when you can hear the guitars, like the beginning of the second track, you actually get like it opens with just a guitar riff and then a like bellowing laugh. And I mean, you can hear it clearly. It's just the amount of attention and presence that the synth work is given on this mix that I think is probably an issue. But once again, just like that's part of the songwriting here.
Thanks, Ian, for that. Appreciate you, man. Why aren't you in bed? It's late over there. Go to bed. Thank you, man. All right, Jim.
I was having trouble getting off mute there. Yeah, I think we're all saying kind of the same type of things. So I'll try to keep it brief, but it's criminal to me where the guitar is in the mix on this thing. It bugs me to no end that it's almost like an afterthought. I get that this is symphonic black metal. I get that is the focus is the orchestration. But that doesn't mean I have to like it, right? I just, the few moments on the record where, guitar, it can be heard, like on the very beginning of the Collapsing Spheres of Time, at the very beginning, like the riff, it starts with a riff, thankfully. You can hear it a little bit better on, and it's just like the nature of the music overall on Travelers of the Stellar Ocean, the riff there, because it's kind of a march kind of a feel. You can feel the riff there. Like those moments on the record where you can actually make out what the guitar is doing are my favorite moments on the record. So I feel like my ability to connect with this record, which I was referencing earlier, that would have been a lot easier for me to do. The possibility of that connection would have been increased had the guitar been more prominent in the mix. But as such, it's almost an afterthought, and with the synths getting all the favor here, it's just really annoying to me as a listener. Again, it just the more metal moments of it, are buried. Yeah, you've got the vocals and the drums that are high in the mix, which still in relation to the synths, they're still not high, but definitely in relation to the guitar. But still, it feels more like, hey man, look what I can do on this keyboard. And there's a little bit of metal in here too somewhere. Yeah. And so it's just not enough for me. The bass, yeah, you can't hear it. I could kind of like feel it, like listening in my headphones. Like I could feel that low in there. Like I could feel like the notes, they weren't really like, they're not defined, but there is some low in there. So I was appreciative of that. A lack of bass, obviously, in black metal is a thing, so it wasn't that surprising. Yeah. So I do appreciate that the lower frequencies, they were able to somehow get those to push through, even though the definition of the playing wasn't. But overall, like, if you're a symphonic black metal fan, you're not going to have a problem with this. You're going to be fine with this. You're going to love, this, triumphant, bombastic feel of classical music barreling at you. But, I don't listen to classical music. I listen to metal. I like classical elements in my metal, but I don't like classical music, like, drowning out my metal when they're in the same room together. So for me, the production was, not bad for the genre, but just bad for me as a listener.
Thanks, Misanthropy. Appreciate you. You're too kind. Thank you. Production. You know what? A lot of what Jim said, again, him and I are cheating off the same paper tonight. I do think the album is produced well for what it is. It sounds really good. The reverb or whatever it is that permeates everything on here, it really rounds off the guitars. It makes them even more nondescript in the mix. In some of the slower songs later in the album, a couple where the riffs and the synths kind of part ways a bit, you can feel the guitars a bit more here. And again, for what type of music this is, it, like Kellen said, if this presents as a synth album and the guitars are a consequence, the production's perfect. It really is. The vocals sit where they need to be. The drums can be heard, though very mechanical sounding. Like I said, I was shocked to find out that an actual drummer was on this. But again, if you were going to record this with a bunch of room ambience, it would have fucked up the whole. It would have lost that cold, calculated, lost in space type of vibe. So I think everything was done for a reason here. I just think that the too much reverb rounded off the edge of the guitars. They're very non-threatening sounding, but they fit perfectly in with what he's doing here. Favorite, least favorite songs. Logan.
All right. So I guess I kind of want to start this one off saying that there's really nothing on here that was an absolute miss for me. Like even the interlude tracks, and we talked about that before. I mean, I could do without the last one. To be fair, like I actually don't even remember what's the final one. Beyond the Scarlet Horizon. I have no recollection of what that sounds like. I think that's like a 6-minute one, too. 5 minutes and 38 seconds. I have no idea. I think I checked out every time after the title track plays at the end. I really do not mind the Stargate for what it is. I mean, as I said, for me, it transports me back to the good old days of playing RuneScape at age 11, and then I'm cutting down trees, and I don't touch my keyboard, after like 5 minutes, and it logs me out, and the main title sequence starts playing because I've been logged out. It just takes me back to that time. It's kind of a cool flashback. And honestly, it's funny hearing it from you guys. Everyone has their own individual like video game experience that this album kind of makes us think of. So mine is RuneScape. So yeah, no actual songs were like an outright misstep. A lot of the time, though, I wouldn't necessarily have much recollection of what I was listening to. Like, there's definitely a good portion of this album that I would kind of glaze over. My smooth brain sludge fan, mindset would just take over, and I would tune out all the orchestration and stuff. So I going into my favorites, I don't have as many notes as I would like, truthfully. I do enjoy the second and third song, Collapsing Sphere of Time and Ethereal Flames of Chaos. Cool song titles, I think, as was mentioned. Those are both like have proper like guitar leads like in the beginning, and there's moments that the guitar I think jump out throughout those songs. Ethereal Flames might be my favorite on the album. There's some really like feverish and urgent sounding keys in like the verses of that track that I don't know, really kind of get stuck in my head and feel almost like schizophrenic at times, which I thought were kind of cool. And yeah, both tracks to me had a proper guitar prominence at times, not throughout, but enough that I took note. And then I actually enjoyed the title track closing it out. There's this shift that happens about the 5-minute mark where the fantasy synths pop back up and it gets all like uplifting like Disney music, and I kind of like that part. I don't know, it just kind of woke me up out of my stupor.
Did you sing a song to a squirrel?
I did, yeah. I felt like I was out like frolicking with birds and
have the birds come and dress
stuff.
you in the morning.
It was after beer number 5, that's where I'm at. I'm
puts on a grief shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, let it go.
I'm just frolicking in the brook, listening to Sirius. And then like at the 7-minute mark, there's this kind of epic like building of the keyboard elements that feels like a proper crescendo for the album, and it kind of carries out the rest of the duration. And I enjoy the drum performance during this last like 2 minutes of proper music. So the title track to me gets a thumbs up as well.
All right, Jim.
Favorite, least favorite.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm with Logan on Ethereal Flames of Chaos. A very cool, weird riff sort of at the start of this one. And the way that it moves underneath the synths, I think helps it stand out. And this song actually, compositionally, I think it's one of the better tracks because it really does build to a crescendo. Like where it heads in the song, like it kind of goes and goes and goes and builds and builds. So it's direction. It's not directionless. Like I feel like the last instrumental track that Logan was saying, dude, I had the exact same experience on that last track. I can't tell you what it sounds like at all. It was so flat and so boring. It just went in one ear and out the other. And I'm like, oh, it just started over again. Like, like the however many minutes, 8-9 minutes of that song, and then it flips back to the first one. Like, I don't know what happens. It's just so flat and plain. But Ethereal Flames of Chaos does have a personality to it. My only dig on that song is the goofy flute bits, just like took me right in. I'm like, hey,
Goofy flute.
goofy
Let's name
flute,
it
man.
project.
Like, it's
Yeah.
going good. So they're like, I'm like, what? I mean, hey, man, a good, power metal song. It's about Middle Earth or something. Yeah, bring it on, man. Give me the flutes. I mean, whatever. I am not a flute hater. But, in the context of a symphonic black metal album that I'm having a lot of trouble connecting with, like you're finally doing something cool. It's got an energy. It's building to something. You popped the balloon with that. I was okay. Here we go. Back into the silliness again. But still, if you want to find something on this to like, I would say that is a decent track. I also like Travelers of the Stellar Ocean, which is the 5th song. I mentioned earlier, the riff is actually audible on this. It's got a kind of a march feel, and the orchestration behind it supports that. In that metal sense, where it's like I'm marching off to war, like the orchestration, it feels sensible. It has a, like a metal like feel to it. And behind the verse vocals, the riff kind of has this tension. The chords are playing like create tension. So yeah, you have to listen hard to hear the riff. But if you hear it, like the chords there are have a great, almost dissonant kind of feel to it. So for me, it's Travelers of the Stellar Ocean, Ethereal Flames of Chaos. Track 2, also the Collapsing Spheres of Time. Also, Logan, I know you mentioned that one as well. That's the one song that starts with a riff. So I'm going to give it props just for that. You get a full, 10 seconds of riff, with nothing else obliterating it. So 2, 3, and 5, and the rest of it, I don't really have much for. But yeah, that Beyond the Scarlet Horizon, man, it's kind of elevator for me. So that's a hard pass.
Kellen.
So I will agree. The Ethereal Flames, I also think one of the things that makes this album more challenging is I think he's actually second, like a drummer second. If there were probably more diversity in terms of the drum work, I would have been, and I don't know if that's been swallowed up, but the pacing of this record, I also don't think helps the songs. Meaning on that 3rd track, there's a moment where we almost get this like opportunity to breathe amongst all the chaos. It opens up and there's sort of a lead guitar sort of moment that's clean, playing inside of a more spacious riff. For one that's meant to be sort of a cosmic experience, there's not a lot of breathing room on this. I think that kind of suffocating aspect of this record does not serve it well. And it's one of the few moments over the course of this listen where we get an open moment to just kind of breathe and let the kind of soak in all this synth work. I just think the blasting over some of the tracks like Collapsing Spheres of Time and Aeons of Magick, they're these 9-minute long pieces. And that's, to me, they aren't bad tracks and they're black metal songs or symphonic in that nature. But like, to me, I don't think compositionally they are dynamic enough. I don't go through enough great sort of peaks and valleys for that 9 minutes to be worth the ride. So they're actually more challenging songs for me. I do like the opener. Sidereal Mirror sort of sets the template as to what's to come. Because I listened to that song so many times, it was my first song when the impression I had with this record, I've kind of latched onto it. I do think it's a little bit more interesting on the back end of this in terms of the structure and the phrasing. And like I can pick out key sort of synth moments and how it's moves to chorus, verse, so on and so forth. And I will second, third, both Jim and Logan on Travelers of the Stellar Ocean. That to me actually feels like the closest we get to a metal track on this album.
It's my favorite song on the album too. Spoiler alert. Yeah.
I just think, and I don't know if that was a choice in the mixing, but guitars are voiced more prominently here. And it's a welcome addition. I actually went through and like tried to see if it was part of like an old song, like part of a demo that they had re-recorded or something like that. I think it's the original track here. And it is like, if you are looking for one that is a bit more traditional black metal leaning, it does work. But yeah, I can understand, for me, both the instrumental Stargate and Beyond the Scarlet Horizon, like they're the reason I chose this album for Album Club, because I wanted to see what we would do with it. It is a tipping point for this world. And every time I listen to it, I feel sort of divided as to how to experience symphonic black metal at this time period. But they do not work for me. And I think they are just completely lost relative to the world that kind of created it.
Everybody go. It's me, right? Okay. Yeah, my favorite, Travelers of the Stellar Ocean. It seems like the second half of this album is where we start to get a little bit more separation between, a very slight separation between the guitars and the synths. And on this track, it is the case. The music itself possesses powerful dynamics, both in the change from slower to faster tempo shifts and more impactful riffs. When the synths are kind of off doing their own thing or less, you can actually hear the riffs, and the riffs on this song are pretty good. They're really good. The atmosphere on this song acts more of a punctuation rather than suffocating everything. So it's nice when the synth work kind of takes a step back to where it should be. Sorry. And that's coming from a guy that does like electronic music on occasion too. I also really like the title track. And again, it's just more instances of guitar and synth separation, kind of giving the guitars more room to do metal things, you know. Least favorite is the Stargate, not because the track is bad. It just feels, what I write. It's a soundtrack to the as yet unmade movie Lord of the Rings Part 4, Mordor Strikes Back. So there you go. There's that. And yeah, as a whole, the album, it does what it does well. It just, like I said, I feel like I've heard it almost played the exact same way by multiple bands before it. And like I said, I couldn't shake it. Judgment, final thoughts. Jim.
Yeah, I think my feelings on the record have been pretty clear the whole time. I couldn't even pretend to show a lot of passion for this. This isn't a bad record. It is really well executed. These guys are fantastic musicians. The songwriting skills of these guys are very high on the register. This is really a matter of taste, as all of our opinions are. But I think in this particular case, this really shouts that from the highest rooftop, because if we're just taking this from like a musicality and capability perspective, these guys, they bullseye every time. But I just feel that it's passionless. I don't get anything from it. There's a point for me where, again, as I mentioned earlier, where technicality can just become a blur to me, and I feel numb towards it. Like it's the same feeling I get when I listen to like a band, like let's take something that sounds completely different, but also just as technical in a completely different way. Like Archspire, extremely technical, incredibly awesome musicians, but I just feel nothing when I listen to it. If you're all about talent and skill level, and that's enough to satisfy you as a listener, this is going to be great black metal for you. If you love symphonic black metal, this is going to be great black metal for you. But if you're like me and, you know, there has to be an undercurrent of passion behind it that powers that technicality in the same way I feel that, you know, in the Nightside Eclipse had that passion and intensity underneath it all. It's not going to be for you, and it's certainly not for me.
Logan.
So, I mean, for me, this was kind of a
There.
good. Sorry,
Yeah. I don't know what's going on. There we go.
For me, this kind of was a good exercise into listening to a genre and a style I don't typically like as much or listen to as much. So, I mean, going in, I kind of knew it probably wasn't going to be for me, kind of as what Jim basically said. And surprise, surprise, it really is not. Like, I definitely did not find myself connecting with it and, you know, wanting to return to it. But that being said, it is still like an impressive album in its own right, and the amount of dedication to programming the synths and the orchestration, I think, should be admired. If you're a fan of the style, I think it definitely warrants a listen. And if you want to hear maybe the exact tipping point for symphonic black metal in 2000, you know, this could be that album. You know, I'd have to dive in deeper to truthfully be like, yeah, this is where they jumped the shark. But it's just so big and over the top, impressively so, that, you know, you kind of can't ignore the fact that they at least tried it. They turned the knob up to 11 with using the synths and the orchestration as much as they did, and letting that dictate their songwriting and the flow of the album. That it is somewhat unique, and for me, in my listening experience, it kind of at least stands out for that. I mean, that being said, it's not something, as I said, I'll return to, but if I find it at Goodwill, I'll buy it. Yeah.
If this shows up at Goodwill and you show it, I will eat a shoe. Seriously.
Oh, all right. We'll see.
I mean, Logan is the person, though, that if it is going to be someone who finds it, it'll be him.
It could happen. I would give it honestly, I would give it a 7, because nothing like explicitly turned me off from it. It was just the fact that I could not connect with this album on a personal level. But like, still musically, it is impressively done, and yeah, that deserves some credit. So yeah, 7 out of 10 for me.
Jim went. I'll let Kellen have the last word on this. Yeah, this to me, it sounds like at the later end of 2000. It sounds like a band trying to emulate its influences to a T, to a fault. But still, like Jim said, this is still a good record. It's still technically proficient. They do what they do well. But as far as I can't give it past a 6. I can't go past a 6 on it. I think it's again, interesting to listen to it again. I maybe if I'd never heard this when it came out, maybe my opinion would be slightly different, because I do like some of the other bands we talked about tonight, you know, a bit more, but they prioritize the synth work a bit differently. And I think having the synth work propped up too far front forward, it's just that's for the guitars. Let the guitars, you know, point towards the enemy. Point this towards the enemy. It should be the guitars, you know. The synth should be there for colorization. It should be there for atmospherics. And though the guy is a very proficient synth player, keyboard player, a lot of it's just chords. He's just playing a chord progression in the guitar, and the fact that the guitars follow it, it just kind of a wasted opportunity. So yeah, it's a 6. Can't go higher, and I wouldn't feel comfortable going worse, because it's technically a good record, and I do really like the vocals too. Kellen, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not like a great record, but I think it is a little glimpse into a time period in which this was a big deal, and how a specific style can kind of push itself too far and potentially out of relevancy and like offend a fan base that may be into it. So at moments on this record, like it's something that'll sit on my shelf, and then I'll pull it off and I'll think like, hey, this isn't not I hadn't heard this before Album Club. I probably hadn't listened to it in around a year or so. And I grabbed it and I was like, I'll give this a try. And upon first spin, like, okay, yeah. But then sure enough, this is over the top. And like over listening to this record this past week, my opinion hasn't changed. And I don't know, like the reason I was kind of listening to this in concert with the Nagzul record is it feels like there is a deliberate attempt from a lot of bands who are doing this now to try and pull back from what the mistakes that were made a generation prior. They're cognizant of how like certain bands took it to a certain level that offended a black metal sensibility, and they're trying to sort of hold on to that. And that Iconoclast record was in 2009. So by the end of the the aughts, at least there was some deliberate attempt and awareness from how to like reassert true black metal sort of credentials within a symphonic black metal sound. So I just think this is a cool sort of like, it's not a great record. Here are the mistakes you can make kind of example for where this album is potentially technically proficient and interesting at times. I think there are some like notable mistakes that are probably worthy for people to pay attention to as what was going on in this time period.
Right on. So there you have it. This was a very cool pick. Seriously, talk about a blast from the past.
You mentioned you had the promo. I didn't think you were going to be able to pull it out. So
yeah, I found it before the flood. Anyway, who's picking for next week? All right, what you got?
So okay, do we want to redeem ourselves with what I feel is some really good black metal, or do we want to go a different direction and go to some black and death metal? I'll let you guys.
It's up to you. That's up to you. Your pick.
I'm having trouble. I have both albums pulled here, and I'm trying to decide.
What you don't pick this time, we'll get next time. What are you going to say?
What are you going to say, Kellen?
Go for some black and death stuff.
All right, let's do Sulfur Aeon. What's the name of this one's kind of weird. Gateway to the Antisphere. Antisphere. Yep.
All right. Cool. Great album. Great band. That'll be a fun one.
I'll put this in the chat too for everybody.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks everybody. Great show. Thanks to all the super chats. Appreciate you folks. Logan, you just dropped a review, which I have yet to watch. What else is going on over in Metal and Beer Snob land?
Oh, probably some more reviews. I'm trying to shoot some more stuff for Metallurgy here. I got a couple of albums I want to talk about that are coming out in November. Seems like a packed month for new releases. And then hard to believe, but year-end list stuff is coming up pretty soon. So I'm starting to take a look at that and potentially talking about favorite album covers and favorite live shows of the year as well before actually talking about favorite albums. I don't know. For me, it's a fun time of year. I always enjoy hearing about, everyone's favorite whatever. I love list making, so throw it all out there. But more to come for sure. Oh, also, I'm sorry. Ulcerate. I saw Ulcerate yesterday. The band that opened is the band that is now signed on Eihwaz for their upcoming tape release, Burial Gift. They absolutely killed it. Amazing live band. I can now confirm during their concert they announced there's a tape coming. So I don't know. Stay tuned, everyone. And hopefully they'll be playing more live shows and stuff. And you'll definitely be hearing more about them in the coming month or so.
You want to follow up on that, Jim?
Yes. Surprisingly, the plant got the tapes out to me. So stunning. Yeah, they told me it was going to be like near the end of the month. So yeah. So I've got to touch base with the band and get them their copies shipped out. I think we'll still stick to our December 1st release date. But because we've got all the promos set up and everything. But yeah, they're here. They look great, and we're excited to get these up in the shop when the time comes. And of course, we'll keep you guys posted so you guys can support some New Orleans black metal.
Hell yeah. Kellen, what's going on over at Killing for Company?
Yeah, I'm so probably the video that I'm working on, probably end of the year, is when it'll come out. So I'm spending a lot of time. I'm going to write out this script and everything, record it. So it's going to be a longer project. And just with the holidays and my work season, that's probably the time frame to when I can say with some degree of confidence it'll have it all put together for you. But it'll be some time before that comes out. In the shorter window, probably end of this month here, Jim and I will get back together for a collaboration on the new Perdition Temple record. So
Which I was using as a palate cleanser for the ones we covered tonight.
Yep.
for sure.
All right. Well, as far as metallurgy goes, Monday we dropped a review. Our friend Jimmy from Future Ruins sent a review for Adornment. Go check that out. Pretty dense atmospheric funeral doom with a, I don't know, Lord of the Rings type of thing going on in it. Numenor, another metal band singing about the destruction of Numenor. So there you go. Tonight, of course, and then Friday, Melanie Loves Death Metal will be joining us again. We're going to be discussing and ranking the AC/DC catalog. So there's that.
Crickets.
Been a challenge. I mean, you get to a certain
Strong
point.
man, you're a strong man.
You get to a point. It's second verse, same as the first. Anyway,
We're talking about not feeling things. This is when we're here listening to music.
I feel nothing. And then yeah, they got the Jim and Kellen review, and then I think me and Rick might be covering the new Lamp of Murmur. I don't know if that's going to happen yet or not, but maybe. There's going to be stuff coming. Just check out. If you're not subscribed, click subscribe. Thank you. We did hit 7,000 subscribers. You all rule. Thank you so much for joining us and spending a little time with us every week. It's nice. We appreciate you. But that's it. Until then, we will see this crew next Wednesday, but I'll see you Friday and I'll be back in black. Cheers.